so sorry that I'm about to do this to you guys, but I'm going to roll this clip of Charlie Kirk, and you're going to end up agreeing with him. Fuck. Like, I'm warning you. Grab whatever coping mechanism you need to get through this. A drink, a dog, a blanket. I don't know, but here we go.
So I've been to Israel many times. The whole country's a fortress. When I first heard this story, I still had the same gut instinct that I did initially. I find this very hard to believe. I've been to that Gaza border. You cannot go 10 feet without running into a 19-year-old with an AR-15 or an automatic machine gun that is an IDF soldier. Right? The whole country is surveilled. And so let me just kind of go through this. We don't talk about Israeli politics very often, and most Americans don't know this. The last 9 months, Israel is on the brink of civil war. It's not an exaggeration. This judicial stuff, there were hundreds of thousands of Israelis taking to the streets because Bibi Netanyahu is basically redefining the Israeli constitution. That's not an exaggeration, right? He said the judicial branch has too much power. There were protests planned this week against Netanyahu, where they anticipated tens of thousands of people to take to the streets. That's all gone, Patrick. Netanyahu now has an emergency government and a mandate to lead. I'm not willing to go so far that saying that Netanyahu knew or there was intelligence here, but I think some questions need to be asked. Was there a stand down order? Was there a stand down order? 6 hours? I don't believe it. Israel's the size of New Jersey. When I took a helicopter ride from Jerusalem to the Gaza border, it's 45 minutes. 6 hours. They're live streaming the killing of Jews. Did somebody in the government say stand down? That is a legitimate, non-conspiracy question. The whole country is the IDF. The whole country is. Yeah. And you're trying to tell me that they're going to concerts and kibbutzes and schools, and by reports, 6 hours. Let's say it's 3 hours. That's suspect.
Go ahead, Rob. It's also not like a right-wing reporting. This is from the New York Times.
For those of you who didn't know, the Israeli people, some of them, are protesting, and they are calling for Netanyahu's resignation because they believe he's a failure. They believe he's committing war crimes. They believe he is the devil himself. They are calling for his resignation. And I've heard even some reports say that they're willing to exchange him for the hostages. They want to give Netanyahu to Hamas to exchange him for the hostages. Yeah, his people don't like him.
In many ways, what's happening in the Middle East, and in particular with Gaza right now, we have some moral responsibility for both sides in a way, because we provide help and funding for both Arab nations and Israel. And so we definitely have a moral responsibility, and especially now today, the weapons being used to kill so many Palestinians are American weapons, and American funds essentially are being used for this. But there's a political liability which I think is something that we fail to look at, because too often there's so much blowback from our intervention in areas that we shouldn't be involved in. You know, Hamas, if you look at the history, you'll find out that Hamas was encouraged and really started by Israel, because they wanted Hamas to counteract Yasser Arafat. And you say, well, yeah, that was better then and it served its purpose, but we didn't want Hamas to do this. So then we as Americans say, well, we have such a good system, we're going to impose this on the world. We're going to invade Iraq and teach people how to be Democrats. We want free elections. So we encourage the Palestinians to have a free election. They do, and they elect Hamas. So we first indirectly and directly through Israel help establish Hamas. Then we have election. Then Hamas becomes dominant, so we have to kill them. You know, it just doesn't make sense. During the 80s, you know, we were allied with Osama bin Laden. and we were contending with the Soviets. It was at that time our CAA thought it was good if we radicalized the Muslim world. So we financed the madrasa schools to radicalize the Muslims in order to compete with the Soviets. There's too much blowback. There's a lot of reasons why we should oppose this resolution. It is not in the interest of the United States. It's not in the interest of Israel either.
Breaking news. I was staying quiet on this topic, and here's why.
Benjamin Netanyahu is very unpopular in Israel, that there are hundreds of thousands of people protesting in the streets before this attack happened. And what we also find out is that Hamas was invented by Israel. Why? Because there was the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO, and they were moderate and they were secular. Well, so Israel's idea was, hey, let's make this radical, religious extremist organization, and they'll split the Palestinians. And so divide and conquer is much easier than trying to conquer a united Palestine. So they listen, here it is. Anyone who wants to thwart the this is from Haaretz. Anyone who wants to thwart the establishment of a Palestine state has to support bolstering Hamas and transferring money to Hamas. This is what Netanyahu told the Likud party's Knesset members in March of 2019. This is part of our strategy. Well, first, let me say, great job.
Wow.
So just again, this is something I don't think you'll be told on mainstream news media, is that Israel government itself invented Hamas, funded Hamas, because they thought it would be easier to control the Palestinian people with two different organizations vying for their loyalty. And so that's called divide and conquer. And they're not going to tell you that on CNN or Fox or NBC News, or they're not going to tell you that, what?
This is 29. This ain't 2006 when they walled them up because they voted for
They
Hamas.
blockade on 2006.
And so you blockaded them for how long? 17 years for voting for Hamas. And you're paying money to Hamas in 2019, and you're telling everybody that. I didn't know you were part of Iran.
Egypt intelligence official says Israel ignored repeated warnings of something big.
Was the warning not to invent Hamas?
Hey, come on. We can either play the blame game or we can do the adult thing and flatten Gaza and then bomb Iran's oil refineries.
Yeah.
That's the grown-up thing to do. In fact, whatever happens, we should definitely attack Iran. Am I right?
I'm thinking about that right now. I'm looking to the next attack. I'm with Lindsey
Jim,
Graham right now.
This is the thing, Jimmy, that we have to talk about. But it could spin so far out of control. What happens if they do go after and hit Iran? Iran is aligned with Russia.
Yeah.
This can get crazy.
Well, we'll forget all about that Ukraine screw up, won't we?
This could get really World War III, right?
Can any deal be done that doesn't involve sitting across a table with Hamas?
I've met several times with Hamas leadership, and I think they are willing to accept Israel to exist peacefully within the 67 borders or some modification of those borders. But the first step has to be to bring Hamas and Fatah together so they can have another honest election. That is a major premise, and I think the 67 borders between the two with some modifications will lead to a two-state solution. Netanyahu now, I believe, has decided unequivocally to move to a one-state solution, which every one of his predecessors in the prime ministership have condemned as a disaster for Israel. And I think Israel is now moving toward a disaster for itself and insisting that all the way from the Jordan River to the